Okay, well, let's get started. So, hello everyone, welcome to our Student Life on College Hill panel. My name is Peaches Valdez. I am the Dean of Admission here at Hamilton, and I will be the moderator for this evening. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, and of course, our wonderful panelists who will introduce themselves in a moment. So first and foremost, thank you for joining us, taking time out of your schedules to be with us. We know it's difficult to explore colleges, especially given the events in our community and our world. And while our situations are different, we empathize with the range of emotions you all must feel right now, and hope that this conversation will help you learn more about this inclusive community at Hamilton, provide some levity, and hope to show you why we chose Hamilton as our home. So we're gonna start off with some introductions of our panelists. And as I mentioned, my name is Peaches Valdez. I am the Dean of Admission here. And so next we'll go with Jay. You wanna introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jay Yeager. I use they, them pronouns. I am an area director in the Department of Residential Life, which means that I supervise the RAs and I support students who live on campus. I'm actually in my campus apartment right now, so that's part of my job. A feature is that I live on campus so that I have direct access to support students at all hours of the day. And then I also advise the Queer Student Union, which is a student org in the Days Masolo Cultural Center.
Okay, great. And so next we'll go to Toscana.
Hello, my name is Toscana Finca. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am calling to you live from Culver City, California. So that's Southern California, LA County. I am in the class of 2022, so rising junior, which is crazy for me to say. I am a dance and neuroscience double major. I'm also on the pre-med track. On campus, I am a tour guide. I am a part of the dance team, and I do some comedy improv. We're called Yoda Pez, so hopefully make some laughs.
Thanks, Toscana. Next, let's go to Will.
Hey, my name is Will. I'm calling from outside of Boston, a little bit west of the city. I am a double econ and also world politics major. And I am involved in Model UN. I was vice president this last semester. I play Ultimate Frisbee for Hamilton's Club Ultimate Frisbee team, the Hot Saucers, and I also work in the admissions office.
And let's end with Isla.
Hi, my name's Isla. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm coming from Rochester, New York, so not too far from Hamilton. I'm a bio major with a social minor, and I'm also on the pre-med track, so I've been using this time to study for the MCAT. Fun times. On campus, I'm on our varsity tennis team, and next year I will also be working as a senior admissions fellow, so I get to interview students who are applying, which is crazy because I feel like it was just yesterday that I was in that position, and now I'm getting ready for my senior year, which is very sad because I love Hamilton so much. So I get to share that with everyone now I interview.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules to help give a story, share the story of Hamilton with our prospective students and their families. So we have some great questions that we've already prepared, but I know that we're going to get questions for our panelists throughout the evening. And just so you know that students and families can add their questions to the chat box to the right of their screen. And we'll try to answer as many as possible. So let's get started. And I think the first question that I would love for all of you to answer is, what drew you to Hamilton? So for students, think about your college experience and what was that like? Choosing colleges, exploring them, and then what made Hamilton rise to the top of the list? And then also for you, Jay, as a staff member on this campus, what about the community stood out to you saying, I want to be part of Hamilton? So let's start with Isla.
Yeah, so for me, one of the biggest things about Hamilton was just a tight-knit community. And obviously Hamilton is a small school, but when you're on campus, it doesn't feel small, which is something that I really appreciated when I visited, because our campus has multiple sides to it. We have many academic buildings, many places to study. And I think that I really like the tight-knit community and even getting to talk to professors as I was applying. And I remember one of the professors actually that I met with during, after I got admitted, he actually became my advisor and now is my thesis advisor. So it's kind of a funny little full coming of circle for that. And I think that I just love how professors take an interest in you right away, and you sort of get a sense of that, even talking to them as you're applying and also when you're admitted. So, and you get to build and accumulate that relationship over your 4 years at Hamilton.
And how about you, Toscana? What drew you to Hamilton?
I was looking at a lot of similar colleges, small liberal arts colleges, just because I knew that that's what I wanted. But Hamilton just totally stood out to me because I remember like walking into admissions and Amy at the front desk, she is, hopefully you guys can come and visit and you'll meet her. She is a gem of a woman. She was just so excited to meet me, and just every single person, students I walked by, professors, classes that I was able to visit, everyone was just so excited for me to be there, both as kind of a prospective student, but also as an accepted student. Oops, sorry about that, when I visited. And so it just was this really welcoming atmosphere. And I still feel that, even though I've already spent 2 years, you'd think, oh, the welcoming atmosphere might kind of dwindle down. Definitely not the case. Just walking by, it's such a warm kind of aura to Hamilton, and I absolutely adore that.
And Will?
For me, I actually had a different road to Toscana. I was looking at schools initially that were incredibly specialized in a couple of different things. But then as I was going through the process and I started to interact with more and more schools, I found myself really looking for a school that would give me a lot of different choices in terms of what I could study, and to be able to learn a lot and then be able to decide how I wanted to apply that knowledge later. So for me, the liberal arts fit was a really good one. And then upon coming to Hamilton and learning more about the variety of tracks, the vibe and the people, a lot of what Toscana and Isla talked about rings really, really true for me. The kinds of interactions are incredibly genuine, and I think the people hold each other to account without necessarily too much competition. And that's a community that I definitely thrive in.
Great, thanks, Will. And then how about you, Jay? What made you decide to join the Hamilton community?
Yeah, so when I was interviewing, I was specifically looking for an institution that had very vibrant student leaders. What I'm most passionate about in my work is developing socially aware and active citizens in students. And what I remember the most was my lunch with RAs, where it was just me and them. And I just learned so much from them, and they're so passionate about making Hamilton a better place and making the world a better place after they leave, and just really developing the best version of Hamilton possible, the most inclusive, the most passionate version of Hamilton possible. And that was just something that I didn't see in other institutions that I interviewed with. And so that really, for me, sealed the deal that I wanted to be here and work with these students.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So one of the things that, so Jay, something that you brought up was regarding the passion of our students and that commitment. And what I've seen as a member of the community is definitely that flows right into the academic setting that we have here on campus. And I think one of the things as our prospective students and our guests and our current students know is that Hamilton is committed to a promise to provide a space where students can study what they love. And I think what was interesting out of the introductions of our students was the diversity of academics, that you are so areas of study, that you're so focused in multiple areas of study. And so can you actually talk to us about the open curriculum? What does it mean to you? Was it something that you were aware of before you joined the Hamilton community? I think some of you have touched base on it a little bit, but specifically about the open curriculum, what have you valued about that experience in the academic setting? And Isla, as a senior, you're going to be starting your 4th year in this. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy because, as I said earlier, like, honestly, it really does feel like I was just going through this process. And honestly, at first, I didn't fully comprehend how great having an open curriculum would be. And I think that especially like freshman year, when I was checking in with all my other friends at other schools, and they would go on about, oh, like, I have to take this lecture, I have to do this class. And they're like, it's a 200 kid lecture, it's like an intro class, everyone has to take it. And I'm kind of like, oh, like, I mean, I have intro classes I have to take, but they're for something that I'm interested in, or I get to really like create my schedule, and I'm not forced into spending time on something like I might not be super interested in. And I think that that's a great thing about Hamilton, because it really does let you get to like try every single discipline if you want. And I think that really allows you to also like mix and match like majors and minors. And I think that that's so interesting to me, like hearing a lot of my friends who are like, yeah, like sure, I'm pre-med and everything, but I have a dance minor or I have an art minor. And I think that that's great because you get to sort of cultivate a lot of your different interests. And like Will said, like you really get, it's an interdisciplinary school and you get to interact on so many different levels with like your professors and you learn from your peers. And yeah, I think that's definitely my favorite part of it.
Mm-hmm. Will, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I think the points that Isla made were great ones. And for me, definitely, I think that what's great about the open curriculum is that you get to explore a lot of what you're interested in through the lens of other topics. So for me, a lot of the things that you talk about in class can be used in other classes in terms of concepts and topics. Even theory and points can be brought up that can really inform other classes, which is a lot of how you're going to use that information in the real world anyway. And for me too, with having less requisites in terms of the actual classes that you need to take, you're able to do a lot more exploring. For me, what that looks like in this past year was going into my first year of college, I had absolutely no clue what anthropology was. And so when I first got to school, I had made a couple of friends that were taking the class. And so I jumped into an introductory anthropology class. I've taken it both semesters. I made a really strong connection with the professor, and I'm actually got a chance to internship with her this summer. That never would have happened if I didn't have the freedom to take that introductory class. And so things like that and being able to kind of shift towards what you think you might be interested in, or even taking a class on a whim is incredibly, incredibly nice.
Great. And actually, Toscana, I would like you to answer a question for me. Can you talk about the advising? I think that's one of the things that some, our prospective students get a little nervous about. Like, how are you, college has so much freedom in many ways, and especially with an open curriculum, there's even more freedom about choosing your courses. How do you do that from the very moment you get to campus?
Yeah, so even before you get to campus, you actually get an academic advisor, and they usually choose a professor whose class you'll be taking in the fall. And you have like your top 10 classes. And my advisor the last 2 years, he's a chemistry professor, Professor Adam Van Weinsberg. He is incredible. He really just, right out the gate, just emailed me, was like, hey, I saw that you wanted to do dance and neuroscience. That's a lot of work. Make sure you have a really balanced schedule. And he really focused on making sure that I got all my requirements, whether those are major requirements or our distribution requirements. So that could be classes like writing intensive courses or our quantitative and symbolic reasoning courses, and making sure that I was really set up to be able to have that freedom. So he was like, hey, I saw that you're signed up for 3, science heavy classes. Maybe you should balance that out. And so I took a literature course my first semester, and it turned out to be my favorite course so far. So advisors, regardless of what kind of discipline they're in, they're really, really great at kind of figuring out how to keep your schedule balanced while also kind of maintaining that freedom and keeping you on track.
Mm-hmm. So both Isla and Toscana, you talked in different ways. You talked about the relationship that the students have with the faculty and the mentorship and the support that you have. Jay, can you actually, from a staff perspective, can you share a little bit about how the community of the college and the staff support students? And specifically, can you provide some context about how Hamilton supported students, especially this semester when we all had to pivot and move off campus and move to more remote learning?
Yeah, definitely. In the Division of Student Life, our whole mission and goal is to support students when they're not in the classroom, which turns out is a lot of their day. So really working with folks to make sure that they're building community and staying connected to each other, that folks are developing and really exploring themselves. The whole college motto is to know thyself. So giving opportunities to learn about who you are and not just learning about subject areas. And so we help facilitate that through a number of different ways, through the Career Center, different programs through the Desmo Solo Center and Res Life. And then when we abruptly had to go virtual and students went home, we really tried to switch things up and really hit the ground running as much as we could, translating those programs into things that could happen online. Revisioning what makes sense and what doesn't, what we can work with our budget to make things different. So instead of a big concert, which is how we usually end the year, everyone in person, a huge concert. Instead, we did a bunch of smaller series where folks could engage with celebrities and do like a celebrity workout or a smaller desk concerts and things like that. So people they felt connected to each other. They could enjoy these things, even just like bingo nights and trivia nights, ways to connect with people. Something that makes Hamilton so fun being on campus is just casually running into people all the time in the dining hall, in the residence hall, everywhere you go, just you see somebody you know. So trying to really make that happen in a virtual way. And then also I would just throw out there that we had a huge focus through the Days Masolo Center as well, trying to make sure that students were supported in their many identities. So putting together resource guides that were national, as well as having a local focus, making sure people were having their basic needs met. I'd say specifically for me as the QSU advisor, that's the Queer Student Union. We were just coming up on Trans Day of Visibility, so we really quickly reformulated that and got different things on social media to make sure that trans people were represented. And then we, put together a couple other programs throughout the rest of the semester as well, just to make sure that people were connected to each other and then also back to campus kind of as that central point.
No, great, thank you. And actually, Jay, you're bringing up a really great point about that second part of our promise that we provide to students, which is they get to be who they are. And I love the fact that at Hamilton, there isn't a cookie cutter mold. We're not expecting you to be all these things. It's funny as an admissions officer when we get the question, what makes a Hamilton student or who's the best representation of a Hamilton student? And it's probably one of the toughest questions because there's just so many, ways that we define what a Hamilton student is or who they are. And so I think if you could, let's see, Will and Toscana, if you could talk a little bit about that aspect of being who you are, in regards to some of the activities that you're involved in, your engagement, some of the traditions that are really important to you as being a member of Hamilton's community. That'd be really great to hear.
Yeah, definitely. I can kick off on it. So for a lot of the organizations and then also for the communities, a lot of times the way that I kind of hear people talk about them and how it happened for me is that the communities kind of find you. And so for me, that came out both through a activity that I kind of pursued in high school in ultimate frisbee, in terms of I came because I was, kind of interested in it, but then immediately clicked with the people. And that is what eventually drew me in and kind of kept me to be, involved and really grounded me into the campus initially. And then also a community that I had a fair amount of experience with in terms of Model UN. So I first had experience in high school and then immediately had that same kind of click. And so those were things that allowed me to kind of gain a base on Hamilton's campus in the first couple of weeks. And then I was kind of able to express more. I made a lot of close friends, which was really nice. And then I felt comfortable to be able to expand. But a large part of that was those communities I found in the first couple of weeks on campus.
And how about you, Toscana?
Going off of that, I came into Hamilton and I had this idea. I was like, I knew about the dance team. I knew I was going to audition. And I saw an email saying, we have a comedy improv group. They're going to hold auditions. I was like, I love comedy improv. There was a group in my high school and I thought they were hilarious. I mean, I would be sitting front center, just crying, laughing every show. And so it's something that I always wanted to do and never got the chance to do. And so I said, why not? Worst case scenario, I audition, I bomb it, I make a fool of myself, it's fine. Thankfully, they took me, so I think I made a fool of myself, but maybe in a good way. And it's just I like to describe Yodapes as a kind of really strange mishmash of people that I would have otherwise never, ever, ever, ever have met. And I love everyone. I mean, it's crazy. I go in every single week, twice a week, and I know that I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna be laughing my butt off. And so it's just one of those communities that, I kind of went part way and then they found me and then it's like a match made in heaven. And so I think extracurriculars for sure are a great way to kind of, find a community. But also classes. I mean, I have met some of my closest friends through my classes. So, and even classes that I otherwise would not have taken, like that literature course. I found my best friend through a Shakespeare course, and we're just like this. So you can honestly find community anywhere at Hamilton.
And actually, that's a great question, because I'm gonna rewind us back a little bit, because there was a question regarding academics. And so for Isla, if you could talk a little bit about what your favorite course at Hamilton has been, and then also, as a senior, you had mentioned earlier during your introduction about you're doing research for a professor in the bio department. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so just kind of like about the research side of it. So actually my freshman year, I had Professor Chang as one of my introductory bio lectures. And so for that class, it was one of Hamilton's larger classes, but still only about 45 kids. And I remember I had to miss class one day because I had a tennis tournament that weekend, and I was like really stressed and really nervous. Like, this is the first class I'm missing in college. Like, what am I going to do? And so I emailed him. And I was like, I'm sorry, like I have a tennis tournament this weekend. I have to miss class, like everything. And then he was like, oh, like you're on the tennis team. And that was sort of like our initial point of contact. But then afterwards, he really took like an interest in me, and he remembered me afterwards. And even, I think it was like at least a year and a half later until I had another full-on conversation with him. And he was like, oh, like how's the season going? Like everything. And then I also expressed him my interest in doing genetics research. And he was like, oh, like not a problem. Like, let's sit down, let's talk about it. And I think at Hamilton, Will and Toscana, you both like touched on it. Like things just kind of find you in a way. Like you initially set out like an olive branch, and then, but also like professors remember you because it is such a small, tight-knit community. I remember I was actually talking with him about how there's an incoming freshman who had reached out, and she was like, oh, like I'm interested in the bio department. And he brought her up to me at our last lab meeting. He's like, oh, like there's a new freshman coming, like you can show her the ropes and everything. And so the Hamilton community really makes that effort to sort of make that connection with you. And I think that's what makes it so special, like from a research side, because you get to study what you love and your professors are invested in you.
Great, thank you. So one of the questions, now we're going to fast forward a little bit, but it's tied to the idea of community, Isla, that you're bringing up. And so I think, one question that we get is about just the community outside of Hamilton. What is that like? How do students engage with it? And so actually, I would love for Jay and Will, if both of you could talk a little bit about your connections and your engagement with the local community surrounding the college, that would be great. So Jay?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. Yeah, I've really enjoyed, I was a little bit nervous to come to this small of a town, but I've really enjoyed my time here. I picked up CrossFit. There's an amazing CrossFit gym not too far from here. We do have a great fitness center on campus, so it's very accessible, but I really wanted that like team intense kind of gym feeling. And so there's quite a few people from Hamilton that go there, staff and students. So it's pretty fun to work out together. There's a huge farm nearby that a lot of folks get like farm shares from in the summer and the fall. Lots of opportunities for volunteering there. And then another thing that I really enjoy work-wise about this is that there's another college not too far, maybe 30 minutes away. And we really, we've partnered with them. We've done dances together for like Days Masola Center kind of cluster folks. We've connected and done like Valentine's Day dances and stuff. So there are opportunities to connect within the college, but also with students in smaller colleges nearby as well. So that partnership in the community is really cool.
Great. And how about you, Will? How have you been able to get engaged and involved within the Clinton community in the surrounding area?
Yeah, definitely. So actually let me back up. There's two parts to this, I think. There's the Clinton community, and then there's also the actual physical space that we're on. That's what I was trying to work out. So the first one is the Clinton space, and we were talking about it in the before this. I actually have a Utica coffee mug with me that I've been sipping on water of. Utica Coffee is a coffee shop that we have in Clinton Center. That is right down the hill from us. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a local business. Many students and faculty go there. It's a great little spot. in the center of Clinton, that's no more than 3 or 4 minutes away from the center of campus, there are a couple of restaurants, we have some pizza places, we have a couple of boutiques. It is an incredibly nice local, it's small, but it is very, very homey. Then moving a little bit further, we also have a major mall that's about 10 minutes away. And we have a couple of larger stores. But in talking about the Clinton community itself, I was really pleasantly surprised, like Jay. I found a lot of people who are incredibly passionate about what they did. It is a smaller town, but also that comes with a tremendous amount of community. And then also during the before we went live, I got to talk about how I got to go back to campus yesterday. And the campus is absolutely lit up with life right now. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so being able to kind of have both that community outside of the campus and then also the physical space, it really can't be matched.
Mm-hmm.
And go to Utica Coffee.
Go to Utica Coffee, exactly. I think one thing to share with students is, definitely we are a more rural location. We're about 4.5 hours west of New York City, about 4.5 hours from Boston.
Yeah,
and then also about the same amount from Toronto, Canada. And I think the thing is that even though we're a more rural location, there's quite a bit of access. So there's definitely, as you mentioned, there's New Hartford, which is kind of where the commercial area is. So if you want the mall, the movie theater, the Target shopping, and pretty much any major chain restaurant there in the area, a lot of our students who have to fly, like Toscana, you fly into Syracuse, which is about 45 minutes away. So that is the closest airport. And then the next is Albany. And so we have quite a few students who go, and staff and faculty who go through Syracuse as well. And I think the thing is that there is definitely quite a bit of access. So, we do have Uber and Lyft, we have car shares. And so I think the thing is that we're not isolated in any way, but I think, definitely we want to make sure that students are going to be able to get where they need to go. So there are shuttle services. We have the Jitney service, which is actually run by student drivers. So they drive everyone around. But definitely it's a place where it's a smaller campus, but with a lot of access to other things. And so I think, in Toscana, I think location's a big deal. That's always the question we get, like, what is it really like? And you're coming from California. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Southern California all my life, so I knew I wanted something different. I wanted to experience weather and the seasons for the first time. So definitely, flying from LAX to Syracuse, it takes a toll for sure. Some time zone differences can get a little confusing, especially now since we've gone virtual. My 10 a.m. class was a 7 a.m. class, but we make it work. And as for kind of the rural side of Hamilton, I was really, really concerned. I come from a pretty metropolitan area, so I was a little worried about, kind of the feeling of feeling claustrophobic or, just nothing going on, but it's the complete opposite. Again, Hamilton has just such a vibrant community that you never feel like you're kind of sheltered or bubbled into one little space. There's always something to do. We joke that, if you're like off campus visiting a friend at a nearby school, you're actually missing out more than if you were on campus. And so you definitely don't feel that kind of claustrophobic energy. And of course, like we mentioned, some surrounding areas, New Hartford, Utica, a lot of opportunities to kind of engage with smaller or like local communities, stores, and just people. Everyone's just so friendly nearby as well. Like walking around, people say hi to each other. I never see that in LA. So it's just a really nice kind of balance, I would say, from having access to kind of the more commercial things like Olive Garden or Target, while also having that nice kind of one-on-one intimate community feel where you can just, chat with people that you just met at Utica Coffee.
Mm-hmm. So, Jay, one of the questions that we got one of the questions that we got was specifically about the residential life options and what is housing like here on campus.
Yeah, I think kind of starting with what we were just talking about, one of my personal favorite days on campus is the first day of the year that it snows, because we have so many first years who may be coming from, say, California or Arizona, somewhere that they've never experienced snow before. And so getting to see people experience that for the first time is so fun and cool. I've always grown up with snow, so it's not special to me. and just really enjoying that. And then for people who are nervous about snow, we really do, like, campus is taken care of, facilities does a great job clearing out sidewalks so everyone can get around. I know students complain a lot about like the snowplow sounds, but since people left mid-semester abruptly, I've actually heard a number of students say how much they actually miss their morning wake-up call from the snowplow. So it's those things that you don't realize how much you like it and how much a part of the community it is until you're gone. But yeah, in terms of residential life, we do have, for incoming first years, we have first year specific communities. So that's just to make sure that folks who are coming in are around people who are experiencing the same thing. So people can turn to each other and say, hey, I don't know where KJ is. What's a KJ? That's where I have a class, you know, and they can kind of work together and experience exploring campus together. We have a lot of RAs on campus there to support students. Those are other students, student leaders who are very well trained to support their peers in the moment, again, living in the residence hall as a mentor, as someone who's helping keep the community built and accountable, making sure, you know, the kitchens stay clean and that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're just always here supporting folks, making sure campus stays safe, making sure folks are just having a good experience while they're living on campus, because it is 4 years of living on campus.
Right. So as I was, I was going to ask you, it's one thing that's different about our campus is that it's required residential, right? So what, as you say, all 4 years, you literally are living on campus all 4 years. So yeah, which is very exciting. And seeing people, to me, it means that students are so much more invested in the community. There's not much of an opportunity to just kind of completely disengage, because, your residence hall is 20 feet from your academic building, which is, across campus, which is a whopping 10-minute walk from your research opportunity. And so you're just really always around this vibrant community and connected with people. So actually, one question is thinking about space on campus. So for the students, do you have a favorite spot on campus? Isla.
Oh, I definitely do. I spend so much time, and me and my friends would always meet at Commons at one of our dining halls at noon. And that was sort of like our little tradition. Like, we always tried to get there at noon together so we could sort of catch up with the day. And then afterwards, we would usually go in our science center, we have this cafe called Opus. And they have these amazing cookies that are so addictive that pretty much like every single day, like if I was a little tired and need a little pick me up, I would go plop myself down in front of Opus and I would be like, oh, like I'm going to do some work, like perfect. Like I deserve a cookie. And I would spend hours there in that atrium doing work. And I think the best part of that specific space for me was I would obviously love to go there for like the cookies and the social part and the cafe, but it's really a collaborative space where students work too. And for example, like your professor's offices are just down the hall, and it's not like you have to go out of your way to access those resources. Like I can be doing work in there, and then I'm like, oh, like I have a quick question, like let me quickly run to my professor's office, like upstairs. Or more often than not, when my professors or my lab instructor, they would be next to me in Opus in line, and we would catch up. And that was just a place where I would run into a lot of people, and it was easy to access like academic resources and also a collaborative environment to work with.
So one thing is you've actually brought up food, which is a question that we've gotten as well about the food on campus. So would anyone like to talk about the food and the dining options available for students, and then tell us where their favorite space is on campus?
I can go for it.
Okay.
So initially, Isla took mine for the science center. Science center is such a good place to do work.
It's a big favorite.
It's definitely a student favorite. Opus cookies are the best pick-me-up of all time. For me, though, tying into the food options, one of my favorite places on campus is actually in McEwen in the morning. So McEwen is one of the dining halls on campus. There are 5 different dining options on campus. So Commons, which Isla touched on earlier, is the main dining hall on the north side of campus. McEwen is the one on the south side. And then we also have the Little Pub, which serves lunch during the weekdays, I should say, the diner, and then we also have Bundy. So Bundy is another main sort of eatery for people a little bit further down the hill. The diner is more of a greasy spoon option. And then Little Pub, again, just serves lunch and has more of a salad bar. And it's also a little bit smaller and a little bit more of an intimate space. But for me, one of my favorite spots on campus to do work is I'm a morning person, and I'm an early riser during the school year. And so I love to get up. I used to live on the south side of campus for the first semester, which was amazing. Go kind of get a cup of coffee. And then in the morning, for all the people who woke up before 9 a.m., which wasn't too many people, but like enough people, I got to go into McEwen, swipe in, and then have a cup of coffee and just do work with a bunch of people, which was nice because it kind of had a coffee shop kind of vibe to it, which was definitely something that was conducive to me doing work. And I loved all the people that I saw there every morning.
Great. And how about you, Toscana?
Funnily enough, one of my favorite spots that I was thinking about was diner. So the diner is our greasy food option. There's a jukebox in there that students can control. So obviously, big hit. And so I actually lived in a residence hall called South Hall, right nearby the diner. And so literally any time of day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, off times, weird 4:15 times, I would plop in and I would just sit and talk with the diner staff for like hours on end. I am now best friends with everyone. If you ever see Wally or John, they'll definitely be like, oh my gosh, Toscana's so weird, but we love her. And so it's just such a fun place. Of course, there are always students around. I mean, how could you not love mozzarella sticks? But it's just a great place to either, sit and kind of relax if it's an off time, or really just kind of sing along with the jukebox. One of my favorite memories is on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Diner usually closes at midnight, but then they reopen on those days from 12:30 to 4 a.m. and they serve breakfast foods at night, and it's incredible. And so one of my favorite memories is like coming in at 1 a.m. with a bunch of friends, and the jukebox started playing Bohemian Rhapsody, and every single person in that diner, including all the staff members, were just singing along. And it was just a beautiful moment of really just off-key singing. And I thought it was like a perfect Hamilton moment. I was like, this is beautiful. It sounds horrible, but it's beautiful.
So how about for students who maybe have dietary or religious dietary needs, or they're vegan, vegetarian, what are the offerings available for students with restrictions on their diets? How supportive of the college is that?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think one of the great things is, so we touched upon like the different areas, like the different restaurants and different diners that we have on campus, and each of those places has accommodations for if you're vegan, if you're dairy free, gluten free. And I think it's a great opportunity, especially in Commons. There are certain areas, and it's all very clearly labeled to when you go up to, we have a hotline where it's a lot of hot foods are basically served to you. And next to the meal, it's going to say vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and also there are certain areas like for certain toasters and for certain milks and certain fridges. So they really try to keep food from mixing. And also there are a lot of options, especially in McEwen, like Will was talking about. We have a lot of international foods that are there, which is also like a great place. Like I know sometimes freshman year, I'd always like go for something easy or classic, like I'll just get a grilled cheese or I'll just make a quick salad. But then I really like expanded sort of my horizons. I'd be like, oh, like they have these kinds of fajitas today. And then I'd always be checking the app and telling my friends, I was like, no, like we can't go to Commons again. Like let's go mix it up a little bit. So there are definitely options for different kinds of dining and for accommodations. And also one of my friends, actually, we have a nutritionist on campus who's able to sort of give you a personalized plan and sort of check in with you if you're struggling to maybe get some diverse eating. Because I know, especially going to college, like, it can be easy to be like, oh, like I'll just have like simple pasta or just like stick to one kind of food. I know I found myself guilty of that. And my friends were like, okay, like you really have to mix this up. And so Going to a nutritionist is a great opportunity to sort of see how on campus you can utilize those resources, because it's a little bit of a different conversation than if you were cooking for yourself. And it really helps you utilize Hamilton specific resources. And you just kind of get you get to mix it up a little bit in the dining halls, keep it interesting.
Mm-hmm. So can one of you talk about, the question I get a lot from students is, does it ever feel like the school is too small? In general, we have a little over 1,800 students who are currently on campus during the academic year. We have 150 who are studying abroad or studying away. Does the campus feel small to you all? Yeah, Toscana, you want to take that one?
Because I went to a really, not really big, but pretty big public high school. And I really experienced that kind of large high school where, you walk down the hall and you don't know a single person. And that's exactly why I wanted someplace like Hamilton where I could, walk through Commons, maybe one of our dining halls, and, see people that I didn't recognize, but also always, kind of, look around the dining area and see at least one table with friends, and they'd be like, oh, come over, eat with us. And so I like to say that Hamilton is kind of the perfect balance of, you don't know every single person, but you definitely will see a familiar face. So you don't ever have to worry, if it's the first day of classes in your first semester, or even, like spring semester this past year, I was nervous walking into my classes, like, oh, will I have any friends? Of course you will. And even if you don't, which on the off chance might happen, you definitely will make friends. I took a dance class I was required for my major this past semester and didn't know a single person in the class. And I ended up making friends with a bunch of senior football players, and we just kind of whacked sticks at each other because it was a martial arts and dance class. So it's definitely a great opportunity to meet new people without feeling like you know every single person.
Mm-hmm. So Isla and Will, you're a little bit closer. Your homes are a little bit closer to Hamilton. And so did you find that you needed a car on campus? Is it a walkable campus? Things like that. I mean, when you look at an aerial shot, it's very big. But is it walkable? Do students need to have a car to get around?
I can kick it off.
Okay.
You definitely don't need a car on campus, and it's for sure walkable. For example, my dorm this year was on the dark side of campus. So it's basically the architecture on the two sides of campus is sort of like what connotates like our dark side, light side.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's pretty much like the opposite end of campus from where the science building was. And I remember I was like very curious. I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, like it's on the opposite side of campus. Like I have an 8:30 class. And then I was like, hold on, Isla. I was like, it takes you 10 minutes to walk from one side of campus to the other. Like our long walks that students consider are still only 10 to 15 minutes long. And also what I find is it's a great way for me to run into people on Martin's Way, which is our main walkway that connects pretty much one end of the campus to the other. So within those like 10 minutes, I run into so many people, and that's maybe what makes the long walks longer. But overall, it's definitely a walkable campus. And like we mentioned earlier, we have the shuttle service, the jitney that's run by students that can get you off campus easily. And if you need to access any stores or anything like that, when the jitney's not running, we have Uber and Lyft in the area too. So definitely accessible on and off campus.
Right.
And to add on to that a little bit too, I just finished my first year, and Hamilton College's policy is not to have first years bring cars onto campus until they become second years. So for me, it was a mixture of using the resources on campus, like the jitney, and then also being able to use people's cars who do have their cars on campus. So there is a culture of that, to be able to lend things as long as you're careful. But also, I didn't find myself really needing a car that often. So the only times that you would ever really need a car to go off campus is if you needed to go to the downtown is walkable. You can take a car down, but it's definitely something that you can do. And then moving further off of campus, if you wanted to go to like Dick's or to the mall or to Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, that's something that you can reach by car. But I felt that those kinds of interactions happened few and far between. So it is nice to have a car. I'm planning on bringing a car to campus, but it's definitely not mandatory. And I know people who are in their fourth year who have felt like they've never needed a car as well.
I've never felt like it was definitely something that was like necessary as like part of my Hamilton experience. I feel like what you were saying, like even on like a Sunday morning, I was like, oh, like I'll just stop by Opus on my way to on the way to the library or something like that. So there are definitely things on campus that can fulfill those needs, like in the bookstore if you ever need to run to grab something. And again, I think the community is so tight knit that everyone sort of gives each other rides too. So it's never something that you need and never something that's lacking on campus that you can't get.
Great.
I'll jump in with the
yeah.
regarding cars. I'll just say that when it comes to the end of the semester and folks moving out, a surprising number of students have to jump their cars because they haven't used them all semester. So that's something that always happens. I think cars are just one of those things that people think they need. It gets a security thing, especially if you come from a city. But so many students, they just don't use it. Or they share it. They take the jitney.
And actually, Jay, can you talk a little bit about what does accessibility look like on campus for students and for faculty and staff?
Accessibility in any specific regard?
In regards to students who just to kind of maneuver throughout the campus in ways, are there resources to help students? Like, are there accessibility services on campuses for students to help support them if they have needs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole office dedicated to supporting students with different accessibility needs, whether that's through academics and making sure people have what they need to succeed in a classroom with, you know, more test taking time or a separate test taking room if that's necessary. Folks in the residence hall, there could be a number of different needs that people have when it comes to housing and access to bathrooms or privacy or different things like that. And so there's a process to go through for all of those things, but I would say this for most anything, but especially when it comes to what you need and an accommodation, asking, talking to someone. There's an office that's all we do is support people through getting what they need to be completely successful while they're on campus.
And Jay, I'm going to actually have you take on the next question because you mentioned a little bit about the Days Masolo Center. You talked about the work that you're doing to mentoring students. So what does diversity look like on campus? And I'm going to have Jay answer that one, and then I'm going to have you answer other questions for the students. So,
okay. I think diversity looks like a lot of different things at Hamilton. There's geographic diversity, students coming internationally, to people who live right down their family lives right down the road. So people coming from all over the US, various gender and sexuality, racial identities, abilities. And then also really students here have a big focus on intersection of identities and what their individual experience is, as a trans person of color or as someone who has a disability and is from a low socioeconomic status. And students here are very, from what I've seen, very willing to engage and share their experience and listen to each other. We might not always understand each other or automatically come in having this wealth of knowledge, but students are really open to listening to each other here. And I know that the Student Assembly as well, which is like the student governing body, has a big focus on supporting folks from different backgrounds and learning more about each other and achieving more inclusion and equity on campus, always striving to be better.
Just mention a couple of the things that maybe the live info session, the Days Masolo Center, some of the things that they've done, some of the activities that they've hosted on campus for students.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so the Days Masolo Center oversees a bunch of different cultural student orgs. So there's Queer Student Union, BLSU, which is the Black Latinx Student Union, the Feminist FCC, that's Feminist
of Color Collective.
Yes, there we go. Man, I'm put on the spot and all of a sudden all the acronyms go out of my head. Ugh. And the Women's Center, there's just so many different student orgs. And so I think it's interesting here because those are different student-run organizations. And so there are staff. There's one staff member who oversees it. Her name is Paola Lopez. And then there's student org advisors, and we really work with students and they put on their own events. And so they're a number of historical events that happen every year. So like speakeasy or, just different things that become part of a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And those students really put those on. And then we support folks in making sure that a culture and that tradition thrives.
Great. And I think that, Jay, you started off by kind of giving just a sense of the way that we at Hamilton define diversity. And I think for our prospective guests, just to give you some kind of stats, as I said, we have a little over 1,800 students who currently live on campus. We actually have students from 47 states and 49 countries, so quite a bit of students from all around the world. We actually have 32% of our students will identify as either students of color, domestic students of color, or international students. And then 16% of our students are first in their family go to college. And that's just skimming the surface of who makes this campus. And so I think it's really important to know that there is a resource on campus through the Days Masolo Centers, through the support from the faculty and the staff, that this is a community that welcomes difference and diversity, and that we don't ask students to check anything at the door in defining who they are, what they pursue on this campus, and who they eventually become. We have about 9 minutes, so I'm going to start peppering the group now. So Toscana, can you describe what a typical weekend would be for a student?
Ooh,
in
really
20 seconds or less.
It really depends. It's all about what you want to do. There are a ton of all-campus events. I failed to mention earlier, I'm actually a part of a sorority, so a lot of life organizations will throw all-campus events. One really fun one we had was Hamstock, so Woodstock but Hamilton, where a bunch of student bands performed, and they took donations for a local charity. We also have smaller kind of individual parties. My room, I lived in a quad, so 3 other roommates this past year, we threw a Halloween party. We all dressed up as Teletubbies. We also have a lot of dry events, so late night events that could be like craft events, music events, a ton of options. So take a pick.
And definitely with over 200 organizations on campus, there's going to be quite a bit of options for students. So I was just joking about the 20 seconds. I'm sorry. One thing that we say here at Hamilton is love it here, leave. And so we want students to take advantage of going away and going abroad or doing a domestic program. You were mentioning earlier this evening that you actually you went abroad during your time at Hamilton. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so actually this past fall, I got to study abroad in Australia, which was crazy because I never thought that I would take, I think I was on a plane for over 24 hours, but well worth the experience. And I think something that's worth mentioning too is that if it really wasn't for the open curriculum and sort of the flexibility to be able to take classes at Hamilton without requirements and also transition that abroad, I probably wouldn't have been able to go abroad, especially being like Toscana to like pre-med and having those kinds of requirements. But I think Hamilton's great in pushing you to pursue things that you're passionate about and looking into a broad programs that fit areas of study that you might not be able to pursue in a rural area or even in an undergrad setting in general. I know for me, I'm really interested in various biology research. And so I actually studied in North Queensland, which is right on the Great Barrier Reef. So pretty much every single weekend, I took a 30-minute ferry and I was right on the Great Barrier Reef. And it just sort of became like my little backyard. And I got to study various kinds of fish and different kinds of ecosystems. And then I was able to bring back a different sort of understanding to how, as a community, we can work towards different sustainability and for environmental studies. And I was able to incorporate a lot of those discussions back to Hamilton and sort of share that viewpoint with my peers. And I think that Hamilton encourages you to just take advantage of anything that you're interested in, and really, as our motto is, know thyself. I think that was for me a huge factor because I also got to visit New Zealand in my time abroad. And so I was like, oh, like they have a great healthcare system and I'm really interested in medicine. So how can I relate what I even want to do beyond Hamilton to that experience of my undergrad? And that was something that I encourage everyone to pursue, whether it's, we also have a lot of Hamilton domestic study abroad programs, which actually one of my teammates did in Washington, D.C. And for her, that was perfect because she got to do internships with congressmen and really dive into the political side the politics that she was interested in pursuing after Hamilton, and make connections in her undergrad, which is so rare. And I think you leave Hamilton with a greater sense of the world than just like being stuck in Clinton, New York for 4 years.
And actually, especially as a senior, Isla, what is it, what are your plans for, you had mentioned medical school, that you're preparing for the MCATs. What do you think about life after Hamilton?
I think that you almost don't realize, I kind of mentioned earlier about how you don't realize how good you have it at Hamilton with things like the open curriculum. And I've been pretty much spending my whole days now studying in isolation. But in a way, I kind of realized, like, even talking to some of my other friends who are like preparing for the exam, they're like, well, Hamilton just prepares you better than most people in general. And I was like, what do you, like, I kind of understood what they meant, but I was like, oh, like, what do you mean? They're like, well, think about it this way. Like, you learn this content in smaller lectures where you're engaged with your professors. Your professors want you to do well, and they share like their research because they have the time to dedicate to the students. While I learned this content like a 500 kid lecture on like a TV screen, and I didn't have that sort of personal connection to associate with my learning. I was like, oh, like, you're so right. Like, definitely see that. And also, I had reached out to my professors when the semester had ended, just sort of thanking them for the semester and catching up. And I had mentioned to them, I was like, oh, like, I'm taking the MCAT in a few months. They're like, oh, if you need anything or want to review any topics we covered in class, like, I'd be more than happy to Zoom with you. And actually, I talked to one of my biology professors, like, oh, like, I'm studying this and I kind of forgot it. And might have been 2 years since I've taken that class, but they got back to me right away. And just those connections that you carry on really last, like, throughout your Hamilton experience. Like, even if you have minimal interactions with faculty, they're definitely lasting, and that support system's there for you.
Great, perfect. And so our last question of the night. So if you can think back to your own college search process, what piece of advice would you give these students who are viewing us this evening and going and starting this process in many ways? What piece of advice would you give them as they make their decisions and they pursue that place that they'll call home for the next 4 years? And Will, let's start with you first.
Sure. So for I'm a tour guide for the admissions office of Hamilton, and the words that I usually try to leave people with that take tours on campus are just go with your gut and follow your passions. Because for a lot of institutions, there are many, many good institutions out there. And many of them will prepare you incredibly well for what you want to do in life. But the one thing that you can't really teach is what drives you and what's going to make you get up in the morning. So for me, in my college search process, I found myself wanting to go and study film and media creation. And so I'm really passionate about that. And so for me, that and finding the best place to accompany those things was the biggest driving force of my college decision. So if you can think of something of that drives you like that, fantastic. If you're really not sure of what you want to look at and what you want to study later on in life, that's fine too. But if you have a feeling or you have a passion like that, absolutely run with it, because very rarely will your gut be wrong.
Toscana.
Yeah, I would say to engage, especially now that, visiting colleges is going to be really, really difficult, just to engage, reach out, whether to, professors, staff members, admissions officers, or, students, just try and find a way to talk to people, because that was what really informed my decision. I just love the people at Hamilton who are associated with Hamilton. And so I want to make sure that, other students, prospective students, whether they end up going to Hamilton or not, just to really make sure what kind of community you're going to be at for the next 4 years, because these are important years. And you might end up at a fantastic school but not really fit in, and that would just be miserable. So I would definitely say just don't hesitate to engage, especially at Hamilton. We love talking to students. I love getting emails from prospective students. So I would definitely say do not be afraid to engage and reach out.
Jay?
Yeah, I think kind of going along with that is that you can go to college anywhere, but you might be miserable when you get there. So my piece of advice to kind of make sure that you're not miserable when you get there is that you have a little bit of time right now. So really think about and reflect on your own values and what you want to do in the world. And then look at the institutions that you're interested in and look at their mission statements. Look at what they stand for. Right now is a particularly chaotic and weird time in the world for a number of reasons. And so look at these institutions and see what they're saying and see what they're doing and see how that aligns with your values or not. Because that's really gonna help you understand, are you gonna be uncomfortable with what that institution is doing? Or are you gonna feel like this is a place that's looking out for you, that cares about you and cares about the world in the same ways that you do? So really just focus on your values and how that's going to align with where you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life that, like Toscana said, are really formative years.
Great. And Isla, what would your piece of advice be?
Honestly, my biggest piece of advice would be find somewhere where you feel like you're not compromising on your interests, whether that be from an academic, sports, extracurriculars. And at Hamilton, that was definitely the thing for me. I was like, oh, like I really want to be pre-med. I really want to be able to be actively involved in the community as well as able to play tennis. And I really just realized at Hamilton, you're not forced into a specific mold of a student and you don't have to pick one specific activity. And I didn't really feel, I absolutely did not have to compromise on anything I believed in, on anything I wanted to do. And I think that Hamilton really allowed me to grow as a person even more in that setting.
Great. Well, there's absolutely nothing that I can add as a piece of advice. I think you all covered it beautifully. And that is why we're all part of this community. And so I would like to thank our panelists. I would like to thank our visitors and our guests who are viewing this evening. Sorry we couldn't answer all the questions, but I hope that you'll continue to be in touch with us. What I would ask is that if you would like to learn more about Hamilton, please stay connected with us through our hamilton.discover page. And we will be able to connect with you via interviews, information sessions, connecting with students, but we hope that you'll continue to keep in touch, and good luck with your college search process. Have a good night. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good luck.
Good luck.